Welcome to the Iron Self podcast, where we jump into health, fitness, mindset, and becoming the best version of yourself. Today with your hosts, Mike and Kaila Minion. Welcome back to the Iron Self podcast.
Good morning, guys.
So on today's episode, we are actually going to take a deep dive and get to understand Mike, the myth, the legend.
Far from legend.
We are going to get to know Mike a little bit more and understand maybe a little bit more about his story and what has turned him into this amazing coach that he is.
She's too nice. I love it.
So to kind of get started on this journey, we know that you have a love of sport and wellness. So when did that really all start for you?
For me, it was always, sports were the thing that were kind of woven into our lives, my family's life from a very young age. I'm the youngest of three, so I have an older brother that's 3 years older sister that's 2 years older, and then surprise, here I was. So growing up, we were a very competitive family. It started with school sports, it moved into recreational leagues, and then into competitive league as well. So we really, like, my brother was like baseball and hockey. Myself, I was hockey and soccer more so, and then I got into snowboarding. My sister kind of played everything. She was a bit of a tank. She played football. Absolutely amazing to watch her mow down other people. But really, sports, again, they were really woven into my family because my dad, who was like the patriarch of the family, he was always into sports. So when he wasn't working, he's a police officer, and when he was not working, sports were constantly on the television. So it was just something that was like, it was old hat in our family. Everybody was sports.
So would you say that you kind of like started playing sports like right from like the get-go, like as soon as you were able to?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I think I started playing hockey when I was 3 years old or something like that. Like I mean, we didn't have a video camera or anything like that, but I hear the stories about myself when I was 3 and like learning how to skate, and then I would get super upset because my brother and sister were faster than me, so then I would like go and sit in the net and just be this upset little guy because I couldn't keep up to them, and then I would just sit in the net so they would have to play with me when they'd shoot at the net. So yeah, I started that young, and I mean, soccer, athletics in general, yes, we started very young.
So what kind of inspired you to keep going with that? Like, I know that you always had a love for it, and then you kind of hit some hiccups along the way. So kind of tell us a little bit more about that.
So I'll be honest, winning. I was very competitive, right? So again, family, friends, everybody that I had in my life, we were very competitive. So it's not so much the sport itself, no matter what it was always the competition. It was always pushing to be the best at whatever you were doing. So I remember one of my biggest things is when I was in grade 4, I think it was, we did track and field at school. And I actually won like the overall trophy and got to go on to like the next level of track and field and the next level of track and field because I had been training from when I was so young. But by the time I got to actually compete in grade 4, I absolutely smoked everybody else because I was used to keeping up with my older brother. So it was really that competition is what always kept me going in sport. And to this day, that's why I still, anytime I pick up anything, I mean, everybody who knows me knows that I'm very competitive. I'm the classic try hard. It can be like a rec league, and I will just go hard because I love that competition.
That's awesome. So it shows the benefits of cross training, right? Like, you can take your skills from hockey, you can use them in soccer, you can use them in track and field, and really it's that explosive power, that speed, that agility that really becomes that cross training, and you can start to excel in a lot of different areas.
100%. And this has been like a lifelong thing for myself, is that training aspect to be able to compete at every level. So I mean, when I was younger, I was training so I could compete at the highest level that I could then. And now, even as I'm getting older, I'm 37 years old, and not to toot my own horn, but when I go and play against like teenagers and, young 20-year-olds, I can still compete, and I can still be that guy that is surprising the hell out of everybody because I look after myself and because I'm very, very regimented in how I look after myself. So 100%, that is how you keep that competitive edge for sure. Now, for me, when I was younger and coming out of sports, I think really when I was around 16, I was trying to think about this before we had this episode, and I was trying to remember who it was that I had a conversation with, Somebody that obviously held a high value in my life. It could even be my dad. I don't remember exactly who it was, but somebody told me that something that I was going for that I couldn't do, that I'd never get to that level. And I think it was honestly probably about like playing in the NHL or something like that. Like, no, you'll never make it. And I took that to heart when I was younger. So I think this is like, for me, that's where it started to spiral a little bit, I'll call it. So I started to have those doubts about myself, because up until that point, I could do anything, I could be anybody. And I really was everybody who knows me, anybody who played sports against or with me, I was that competitor. I was always striving to be the best on my team. I was always, you know, I was always pushing people to their limits to get them to play better so that they could keep up too. So really that competitive driving force was always there. And then, yeah, I'm going to guess around 16 or 17, I hit this mental barrier that was like, no, you can't do that. And I believed it. I took it to heart. So that for me was where I started to really question my abilities. And then I started to spiral at that point in my life. So that is where I started to get into drugs and drinking and partying, and it really became more about the social aspect of it than it was the competition and really bettering myself anymore.
I mean, I think that that really speaks to what you believe creates your reality, right? When you believe you can succeed, your reality will show that those things show up, that you can and you will make this happen. But when you believe that you cannot succeed in that, or that or you feel like almost like your dreams have been crushed, we start to create a different reality for ourselves, and we start to, like you said, spiral a little bit, or maybe not going down the path that we originally thought we were. And would you say that during that time maybe you lost a piece of who you were?
100%. I mean, young, right? When you're 16, when you're 17 years old, you think you have everything figured out, but you sure shit do not. So I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I was going to have this illustrious career in sport and that this is how it was going to be. And then I had that bubble kind of popped, and I was like, well, if this isn't who I am now, then who am I, right? So at 16, 17, now I'm in high school and I'm trying to figure out who I am, and all that mattered, because in that external validation world, all that mattered to me was how popular I was. So I hung out with everybody. I mean, you can talk to kids from my high school. Everybody knew me. I was always kind of the life of the party. I was a bit of a shithead, so I'd get into fights. I'd do dumb things. I mean, I was not the role model that I am now, for sure. But I mean, I think going through that taught me a lot of lessons about, when I came out the other side, about who I really wanted to be and who I am as a person.
And I think that that's really something that I want to touch on, is the difference between having confidence in your abilities and skills and self-esteem, and how they very different. They're very, very different in their approaches. So it sounds like you were always fairly confident, like through the entire process. Like you knew, you were sure of yourself in that sense, or even when in those moments when maybe you weren't so sure, you were kind of exuding that I will be sure. And that again is that perception of this is going to persist. But on the inside, where was your self-esteem at?
Self-esteem was shot, apparently. So confidence, I'm going to go on the far end of that spectrum. I was like borderline overly confident. I believed in myself. I worked on a farm my entire, so I started working when I was 12 years old, and I started working on a farm, and I was a strong kid for it. So great experience there, but that also meant, it bolstered my tough guy persona. So that's why I was always, people would, and this sounds weird, but people would try and fight me because they thought I was the tough kid, because my dad was a gigantic cop and I worked on a farm, so they thought I was that guy. So I tend to get into some scraps and stuff growing up, which, looking back now, it's like, what was the point, right? But back then it was what it was. But a lot of that came from the self-esteem that I didn't have there. I didn't have the skills and the abilities to regulate my emotions, any of that. I was never taught that growing up. We were a very religious family, and all the power to anybody who is in the religious realm, 100%, believe what believes, what works for you. But for me, it was, I don't even know how to say this properly, but it was very one-sided. It made me feel small. It made me feel like no matter what you do, you'll never amount up to whatever that might be. So for myself, with my self-esteem, I never talked about it. I never was able to get it out. I don't know how to say
Well, I mean,
that.
like, just knowing you and knowing how things were is like, men don't talk about those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, grade 3, I think, first time that I had somebody very close to me pass away. Sadly enough, it was my dog. Her name was Brooke. She had a bunch of ulcers. She passed away. And I remember feeling like I couldn't actually express emotion about that because I think, forget who it was, somebody in my family, anyways, I was crying about it and they were like, that's the biggest part of life. You got to get used to it. I was like, oh, okay, buck up, let's go. So yeah, that kind of repressing, pushing those emotions down 100%. That was normal.
But knowing what you know now about emotions and the importance of feeling emotions and, sharing that message with others, would you have done things differently?
100%. So now that I know how emotions work and the ability to feel the emotions instead of becoming them, I think in like a very weird sheltered way, I was experiencing the emotion but by becoming them. I was a very angry kid. That's again why I used to kind of lash out a lot. So using that and what I know now, it would be to experience the emotion, feel the emotion, but not to actually become the emotion. Back then, because I was in a mind state where it was like popularity, survival, high school, all this external validation coming in, you kind of get power hungry for that. Once you start getting it going, and you're like, oh, I want more of that. I want to feel that more. But the reality is, you're actually feeling it less because going through that, you're almost numb. Especially because I used to smoke a copious amount of dope growing up because that was kind of my go-to when I was younger, and it just kind of numbed me. And I don't know if it was because again I didn't want to experience the emotions, or if I thought about it too much, then I would experience the emotions, and then I'd be somebody that wouldn't be approved of. Oddly enough, I was doing something that I wasn't approved of anyways.
It's a fine balance, and I think that as a teenager you're balancing life and everything else around it. Emotional regulation comes into that, and then when you don't have that self-efficacy to look at those things to go, this is actually how I'm feeling. I'm not feeling great on the inside. I'm looking for that validation on the outside to help change my inside. And over time, that external validation never changed the inside. And so those emotions and that anger and all of that kind of begins to build. And so then it comes to this like big crux where, oh, okay, now I am in a fight. Now I get to release pieces of that emotion,
Here goes the rage.
regardless of it being like appropriate or not.
Yeah.
But this is where it kind of comes out, and okay, now I feel better.
No, 100%. And for me, I think, I mean, when I finished high school, I had a high school girlfriend that I was with for 3 years or whatever, and then I found out that she cheated on me right at the end of high school, and that kind of, it shattered my world because I thought, puppy love, I thought I was in love, and I was like, oh, this is the girl I'm gonna marry. Little did I know I had a way better one waiting. So it was really that moment for me where I was like, okay, I was in with a really rough crowd at this point, so the end of high school was hard for me. All my athletic friends they were kind of off to one side, and then I had like all my party friends on this side, and then I'll be honest, like I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, and that I'm definitely not proud that I was doing. But that crowd was a very dangerous crowd that I was in. So at the end of high school, after all of that happened, I told myself I needed a change. I was like, this isn't who I want to be. This isn't who I'm meant to be. And my aunt lived on the coast, luckily, and I was like, hey, Aunt Karen, I'm going to move out that way. And she was like, 100%, anything you need. So thank you, Aunt Karen. You're absolutely amazing. But that was my fresh start, and that's where I was walked away from everything because I was like, nope, if I keep on this path, I'm not going to live to see my 30th birthday. And I remember saying that to my mom right before I left. I was like, if I keep living the way I'm living now, I'm not going to make it to 30. There's no chance. 37, high five. Sorry.
But I think that that's important to note, is that you had that ability to take a look at your surroundings and to stop and pause and go, this isn't the right path, because not everybody has that awareness, or I'm going to say that awakening, that moment of realizing just what is going on. And maybe I think that it's like divine intervention at that one moment. It's like, no, this is your moment to change, and the universe is going to work to allow that to happen. And for everybody, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to move across the country to a totally different
BC is beautiful,
place.
but it's too expensive now. No.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you need to uproot yourself and completely move, but it's like, how do I begin to change my circumstances and change into a different version of myself, of who I actually feel in alignment with? Like, you were feeling accepted externally, but you weren't in alignment with yourself.
Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway from me leaving Ontario to go to BC was the fact that I had dug myself such a hole because I had so many different groups of friends, and I could never tell everybody what I was doing with anybody else, if that makes sense, because brutal honesty, it was all illegal stuff. It wasn't like I was killing anybody or anything like that, but it wasn't great things. So for me, I had to be honest with myself and say, is this a life that I actually want? And when I was honest with myself, I realized how dishonest I had been with so many other people around me, because it was easier to tell them lies so that they wouldn't hear about the things I was doing, to protect them and to kind of protect myself from the emotion that I would get from that. So I kind of dug that hole, and then I was like, no, this is not who I want to be. Mm-hmm. So that's when I up and left, and I was like, no, we need fresh slate. I need new people in my life that I can build the life that I want.
So how did your life change once you got to the island? What changes did you make? Because, I mean, to jump into a whole new life and be like, I'm going to be this totally new person and reinvent yourself, seems like it would be very difficult to do.
It was 100%. Nothing about it was easy. I literally packed a full, oddly enough, a hockey bag full of clothes, because I was just like, I got to get out of here. Packed a bag, jumped on a plane, took off. And when I landed, I didn't know what I was going to do right away. I knew that I was really good at detailing cars because I had run a shop in Ontario before I left. And then I was like, well, when I get out to BC, if all else fails, I have really nice cars, so I can just clean cars for a living. And then sure shit, that's what I did, because I was like, oh, I'm really good at this. So I met a guy through my aunt, actually. One of her friends was working at this shop, and they were like, well, they need somebody that actually knows what they're doing to manage this place. So I met the owner of the shop, started managing it, and then within my first, I think, 2 or 3 months there, I was already a partner with him. So it was like, it just kind of, it felt like everything happened for a reason, and it started to roll, and pieces started to come together, and I met this amazing woman.
So I know when I met you, you were probably stressed to all levels of crazy, and you were suffering from crazy digestive upset, stomach issues. Like, there was just no rhyme or reason for what you were going through. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So stress. I'm just gonna simplify this and say, with everything that I just said about why I left Ontario and a lot of like the person who I was compared to who I was becoming, a lot of that stress didn't leave right away. I hadn't learned coping mechanisms. I hadn't learned how to deal with and properly regulate those stress hormones. So a lot of that stress came with me still. So it wasn't like a fresh, clean slate, everything's perfect. It was like all of my old life is still there in the back of my mind. And I had these thoughts, these doubts about, am I going to be the same person out here? Because I'll be honest, when I first got to BC, I kind of got into the same kind of thing, not the exact same by any means. It was a lot more of a mild version of it. But it's like the same crowd started to hang around with me. So like, at the shop that I was at, the guy that was my partner at the time, I found out after being there for a little bit that he was a drug dealer, and I was like, oh boy, this seems familiar. And then right after that, like, some of the other friends that would come by the shop and guys that we were cleaning cars for turned out to be like some pretty heavy bikers, and I was like, okay, so this is very similar to my old life. So I started to like see things that I needed to kind of try and distance myself from. But again, it was all that stress, and then also trying to make the shop work, because when I started there, the shop wasn't doing very well. So I wanted to make sure that anything I had my name on was going to be, the highest level. So I was working, I mean, when you met me, you know this, I was working like 16 to 18-hour days of straight cleaning cars so they'd be perfect, just to get that name up, to build that business. And I think within the first 6 or 8 months of me being there, I was throwing up blood every day, couldn't figure it out. I went into the doctor, they did ultrasounds, I had ulcers all through my stomach, and they said basically it was from stress. So I was like, okay, I need to learn how to deal with this stress now.
Well, okay, and just as a little caveat to that too.
Somebody might have made me go.
We had to actually, Mike had to sleep on the couch, and we had to prop one end of the couch up so he was sleeping on an angle so that the stomach acid could not go up his esophagus at nighttime. So he was literally sleeping almost, I want to say almost standing up because you weren't standing up.
It was like a 35-degree angle.
It was a pretty decent angle in order to stop the stomach acid from coming up due to stress. And so that is a huge thing to realize. And when you went to the doctor, they said, well, you need to manage your stress. And it was like, okay, and we do that how? And I mean, you know, being a younger male is like, okay, well, how did you manage stress? Well, you know, old coping mechanisms come into play. And would you say, like, because you said you started to have that old crowd come back around you, maybe that the frequency that you were vibrating at, that you were just attracting more of that into your life?
Yeah, 100%. It was, I mean, when you are, if you are at a hard point in your life, if you're going through some stuff, it's really hard to break free of that, especially if you've been living in it for so long. It almost just becomes second nature to you, and you almost turn a blind eye to it. I mean, the amount of times that when I first got to Victoria, even, that we go out to the bar and then someone would try and start a fight with one of my friends, and I would go back into old habits and I'd be like, oh, I guess I'm going to beat that guy up for you, kind of thing. So it was like, it was just a comfortable thing. But then again, it was like taking that look and being like, okay, that is not who I want to be. That is who old Mike was. So the first healthy habit that I got, you know this very well, was actually starting hiking again. I wanted to be getting active again because I was like, okay, before all of this shit happened in my life, what did I like to do? Well, I like to be active. I like to be mobile. I like to go and do stuff, see stuff, have some fun with it. So we started hiking. We started climbing every friggin' mountain we could on the island. And that to me was very, very liberating, very stress relieving. I think after we started hiking, I want to say it was within the first 3 or 4 months, I stopped throwing up blood. That was cool.
Well, and it's finding the joy in the things that you want to do, getting out in nature and finding movement, right? That allows us to relieve that stress.
Yeah. Well, and then on top of that, the food that we were eating started to switch slowly. We still had our odd craft dinner day, and we'd have like some meals that were not, I'll say, the healthiest.
We did not let go of craft dinner and rum right away.
Not right away. But we did start eating more healthy foods, and more, like, this was the first time I started eating vegetables. Christ, when I was growing up, I didn't even know what broccoli was until I met this woman. I think I'd heard the name probably, but we never ate it because I was lucky enough, thank you, Mom, that whatever I wanted, she made sure was there. So I never said never once in my life, because I didn't know what it was, would I say, I want broccoli. But finding out how delicious vegetables actually are, and once you start enjoying that and seeing how that makes your body feel, was huge for me. So again, it's funny because it all comes back to our 6 fundamental principles, right? Because it was that slow integration, because it was movement. I started moving my body more again, started feeling good. And then I started nourishing my body better. I was watching who I was hanging out with more. Okay, so nourishment starts to kick in, and then what I'm eating, more nourishment. Oh, that's even better. And then I started to get into, well, where can I start to enjoy my life more? Well, maybe if I actually had a bit more of appreciation for myself and how hard I do work for everything that we do. So then it starts to come into that self-love and figuring that out too. So it's funny just thinking back now, because this was way before we ever had these 6 fundamental principles, but really, they started to change my life before I even thought about it. Crazy.
I think that's huge.
Sorry, that just literally just came into my head as I was talking. I was like, oh shit, that works.
Mind blown.
Yeah, seriously.
Mind blown. So for anybody that doesn't already know this, Mike already said, yes, he didn't know what broccoli was when I met him. But I want to also add to this. When I met him, I used to have to hide vegetables in food. Like, I would make spaghetti and I would blend up carrots and throw them in with the meat so that he wouldn't notice them.
Carrots are for rabbits.
I would skin zucchini and I would cut it up and put it in my chicken pot pie mix, and it would just kind of make it more like of a gravy so that he wouldn't notice it.
When Kaila met me, I was probably the least healthy I had been in a very long time. I was way underweight. I was stressed to the max, and I I was making good money, which was terrifying because at that time, that meant that I wouldn't walk 2 blocks. I would literally get a cab to go 2 blocks. When Kaila and I went on our first date, it was literally 3 blocks away at the, what was it called? The grill?
The Fifth Street Bar and
Fifth
Grill?
Street Bar and Grill. So it was literally 3 blocks away from where Kaila lived. And I was like, well, we're getting a cab. And she was like, it's 3 blocks, you lazy fucker. We're not getting a cab.
And that comes from somebody like myself. I never really got a license until I needed to go to the bar. So for me, walking or taking a bus was just old hat. Like, I walked everywhere. It didn't change me.
But for me, because I was still in that, I'm going to call it like the peacock mode. I wanted to show off because I had money and I had stuff and I had things and I had this beautiful girl that I was trying to impress. So I was like, we don't have to walk, sweetheart. And looking back now, I'm like, wow, that was really stupid. Like,
and little did you know, wheels did not impress me.
but this is the point: is realizing that the things didn't matter, and just being my authentic self is the only reason that I actually got this amazing human being to spend my life with. So, looking back now, there's so much that I wish I could have changed, but at the exact same time, I'm very thankful for all of the shit that I went through because it makes me that much more grateful for everything that I have now.
That's awesome. That's like that is the way you should look back on life. We can't be living in regret, but living with the profoundness of gratitude and how, if I hadn't gone through that, would I know what I want now? And understanding that, that's what we call post-traumatic growth, regardless of whether it being trauma or not. That is growth out of experience. So I know when you were working at the auto detail shop, on top of all your stress and your ulcers, you also struggled with imminent back pain, like
consistent.
It was yeah, but it was like
it was there.
I'm going to say persistent. Maybe imminent is not the right word, but persistent all the time. Back pain. You were going to the chiropractor anywhere from 4 to 5 times a week. Some weeks, not every week, but some weeks. Massages, and you just weren't getting better.
Yeah, 100%. And that was, I'm going to call it an accumulation of everything that I did in my life up until that point. Because when I was younger, I didn't feel the back pain because I was extremely active and I was in really good shape, right? Again, farming, playing sports, competitive. I was in great shape growing up. But then again, when I met Kaila, by that point, I had let go of that because I was kind of sheltering myself. I don't know how to say that any better, but
you were in self-preservation mode.
Yeah, I was in survival mode. I really was. So yeah, my back pain was off the charts. The amount of times that, I know my chiropractor out there on a first name basis, great guy, Clark, hope you're doing amazing. But it's funny because I was in chronic pain and I thought that was how I had to live. I remember saying to you all the time, I was like, well, it doesn't matter what I do, it's never going to get better. Because that's honestly what I thought. And when I was starting, like, this kind of bridges into when I started into my fire service career, right? Because it was the fact that I was in pain all the time was inhibiting me. It wasn't letting me grow. It wasn't letting me progress in my life. So I was like, well, how do I get out of this pain? And this was, again, shortly after I met yourself there. And it was, you started saying, well, I get out of pain by going to the gym.
Well, it's true. I mean, you met me probably 4 months after I had been hit by a car. And so I was forced by insurance.
That's why she got with me, because her mind wasn't quite back yet.
But I was forced by insurance to go to the gym, and I was not a gym goer. And so, for me, I was not in pain.
Yeah. So for me, getting myself out of pain became a priority. And I'll be honest, it didn't become a priority until I took the time for myself and realized that you don't have to live in pain, that, there's ways out of this that don't involve surgery.
Yeah, huge. So at what point in this whole conglomeration did you realize that you wanted to enter into the fire service? Like, because that seems like a big jump to go from detailing cars and living in survival to, I'm going to be a firefighter.
So, watching my dad my entire life growing up, he was a police officer. He served the public, did an amazing job at it. But what I always used to say was, cops are hated. Sorry, all of my police officer friends, I love you guys. But In general, the general view from the public to the police officers is that they always have their backup. There's always that reservation about police officers, and I didn't want anything to do with that. I love the fact that my dad served. I love the fact that he was that person that people could look up to in the community, but I didn't want to be hated. So, for me, I love giving back. I always have. I love helping people, even if it wasn't the best of people. Like I was saying, I had some shitty friends, but I would always look after them because in my heart, I knew it was right to always do your best to help other people. So for me, firefighting was a way that I could have a career that I would enjoy because it's active. I would have a career that I could help people because at my core, even at my shittiest day, I still wanted to help people. And it was something that I could be proud of for the day that I had children, because that was a big thing for me too. I wanted to give my kids the same thing that my dad gave me, which was, I was very proud of my dad for being a cop. I didn't get to hang out with him very much because he was so bloody busy with work. And when he wasn't at work, he was switching shifts to get off of night shift, and then he would be asleep all day anyway. So it's not like I got to spend a ton of time with my dad, but I was so proud of him for what he did. So I wanted my kids to be able to experience that too.
If you're ready to make a change in your life, step into the best version of you, check out our Iron Self Transformation Program. Find more info on our website, www.ironbodycoach.com. When you entered into the fire service, I just knowing because I was a piece of this puzzle, but you did a complete 180. It was like, okay, I registered for fire school, and all of a sudden now I am throwing myself into fitness. Like, I want to say, like, when you had the back pain and all that kind of stuff before, you were maybe going to the gym twice a week. Yep. Maybe
I did it twice a week, and I would do it at this, like, on the Tuesday and on the Thursday, because I would kind of get a little sore on Monday, and then I'd feel a bit better on Tuesday. It'd carry me through till Thursday, and then I would go again so that I'd be decent for the weekend.
So then when you decided to go to fire school, you were like, nope, and it was like balls to the walls, 5 days a week. You were running, you were, lifting crazy weights and all that kind of stuff. How did that transition work for you? Like, that's a huge shift to go from twice a week to 5 days a week or more.
So like we talked about at the very start of this episode, confidence was always a thing for me. I was borderline overly confident. So the same thing came for when I made the decision. And the funny thing is, I was talking to one of my old friends about getting into fire college and starting firefighting. And that friend at that time told me that it was a delusion of grandeur that I would ever get into fire college and ever become a firefighter, so I may as well give up. And I was like, go fuck yourself, I'm gonna do that.
Well, and that, you gotta think back, that would potentially bring up old issues, right? Like that old moment.
You tell me I can't do it.
When you were told you couldn't continue on with hockey.
See, now at this point in my life, I had learned to regulate this a bit more, and when somebody told me I couldn't do it, I took that as a challenge. So I thank you, old friend who did say that to me. If you ever do watch this, no hard feelings are ever held there, because that honestly did push me to become the best version of myself at that time. I started working out 6 days a week. I started running 20K every other day, and then I got up to 20K every bloody day, because I wanted to be, when I got to fire college, I wanted to be the guy that was at the top of that class to begin with. And I unfortunately was not the top of that class to begin with, because Colby Kalanick, you son of a bitch. No. But the point is that I wanted to be the best version of myself by the time I got there, because as soon as I have a goal in my mind, as soon as there is that switch turned, and this has been for my entire life, if something truly holds value to me, I will put everything into it. And this is why we get results. This is why I push everybody so hard, because if you're willing to commit, just like I'm willing to commit, we can make the world spin. Like, it's a beautiful thing. So this is where I jumped in with 2 feet and said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be the best damn firefighter there's ever been, and I'm going to show everybody just how powerful a mindset shift can be.
It's huge. It's huge. And so you went to fire college, everything went great, you came out of fire college. Fast forward, you got a job in Alberta, and you decided, let's move to Alberta, and you started working in the oil fields in the fire service. You're working crazy long shifts. It was like 21 and 5?
21 and 3.
Okay, so crazy long shifts, 12 to plus hours per day.
Minimum 16-hour days.
Yeah, so you were working crazy shifts. How did that take a toll on you? Because it's kind of like fast forward. You went from, working your average, I'm not going to say your average 9 to 5, but a similar kind of time schedule
Yep.
to full-fledged, I'm working nonstop essentially.
So I will say the hardest thing for me right off the start, especially when we just moved from BC over, was when I moved on my own, because you stayed back in BC to begin with. Being away from you, trying to forge this new life on my own, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I remember I called you like my second night there. I was actually in tears, and I was like, this is brutal. Like, I don't have friends, I don't have family, I don't even have a place that I have to live yet. Like, I'm in a freaking hotel. Like, this is absolutely terrible. This is the worst thing ever. And you were like, keep your head up. This is what you've been working towards. This is what you wanted. We're going to get through this. Okay. So I started working these stupid shifts, and I made great money. It was good experience. It was a good career. I could, it's one of those things that you could stay and do, but it wasn't what I wanted to do full time. So for me, those long days became the hardest thing. They were mentally draining. They were physically exhaustive. So for me, I had to figure out how I could make these days tolerable. And the way I did that was started training more. So I started reading in the truck. I started working out on site all day, every day. So I had a 12 to 14 hours on site shift, and every half hour I do 50 push-ups. You can do the math on that. By the end of most days, I'm sitting at thousands of push-ups. So I was getting fit again, feeling good about that again. And then, yeah, just that was the hard part for me, was switching that mindset of I'm stuck here to I get to be here to provide for my family.
I think that the word that stuck out to me there was that you said it was tolerable. And I really want people to understand that work should not be tolerable. Like, to me, I think that there are so many different jobs and careers in this world that you should enjoy what you do. Your job is where you spend, 80% of your time or more, some people.
Spend more time with your workmates than you do with your family.
If you don't like the people you're working with, if you don't like your job, then to me, like, I think, why are you doing it? What are you putting yourself through? So you transitioned from this job, from long hour days, and eventually took on to working some desk jobs.
Yep.
And in that process, became slightly less active.
Slightly. She's so cute and nice.
Slightly less active. And your clothes actually, it felt like it was almost like an overnight thing where they kind of started to not fit so well.
She's saying this so nicely. Started to not fit so well. I went from being extremely active, in great shape, just under 200, I was like 196 pounds of decent muscle mass, and I went from that to sitting at a desk writing policies and procedures, which, don't get me wrong, I am very appreciative of all of the opportunities I've ever had, but that change from active work to a desk job absolutely destroyed me, because I kind of let go of my fitness. I kind of let go of my health. So I just ate whatever was around me and sat behind a desk and wrote policy and procedure. I got up to 220 pounds. I was a big kid for a bit there.
Well, and the thing is that you were also still working long hours. So I think that that's the other piece here, is that it wasn't like you had a ton of time when you would come home at the end of the day, because with travel included and everything,
kids and everything,
there wasn't a lot of hours in the day to stay physically active.
I didn't make time for it. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is I could have made time. There's always ways to make time. I was at my job. I could have, on my lunch break, I could have eaten for the first 15 minutes and gone for a walk, gone for a jog, whatever it is, or gone to a gym that was literally across the street from where I was working. But I didn't choose to do that. And everything in life is a choice. So I was choosing to, I'm going to use the term, be miserable. I was sitting at a desk job. I didn't enjoy sitting at that desk. I was doing it because it provided for my family. But I was losing myself every day that I was there, because that wasn't who I was meant to be. I was meant to help people. And don't get me wrong, writing policies and procedures, I kept people safe. I looked after all of the people that I was supposed to look after. That was my job. My job was safety for the team. So I was really good at that. But I was letting myself drift away. And again, the back pain started to come back. And the weight started to come on. And everything just kind of fell apart. And again, my mental state started to go with that too, because I started to be that humdrum guy. I mean, you know better than anybody. I would come home and Kayla's there smiling with the kids. She's got these little babies in tow, and I would come home and I'd just be like,
Well, you were exhausted. And I think that anybody that's ever worked a desk job at all can totally relate to the fact of it is mentally and physically exhausting to work at a computer or work at a desk and be on all the time. So people sometimes think, oh well, you're quote unquote resting all day. It's like, no, this is very, very draining to do. And I think that that's something that needs to be said. And so at the end of your long days, you come home, you're mentally, physically drained. You have to now give to me and the kids, and then where is the time for Mike and the pieces of this?
well, that's where and that's where it came down to, is that I started to lose myself, and I was like, this isn't who I want to be. This isn't who I was meant to be. So again, figuring out what my greater purpose is and why I was put on this earth, and starting to roll with that, right? So again, like you and I had that conversation, was, this isn't who you're meant to be. This isn't the career for you. It doesn't match with who you are. So I mean, taking that leap of faith and realizing that, we're going to be okay either way. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, what we're doing. We will be able to provide well enough for our family regardless. So taking that true leap of faith and saying, okay, I need to walk away from this then and find something that is for me.
I think that's the power within the universe, to understand that the universe is always working for you, that life is working in your favor, and sometimes you need to just trust the process, trust that leap, that it's going to have your back. And I always say to you, what is the worst case scenario? We're going to live on a box on the side of the corner of the road and we'll be okay. Like,
you find a pretty sweet box. Maybe not in Alberta.
I can eat rice and steak sauce all day long. That doesn't bother me. But
no, for sure.
But at what point did you know that you wanted to be a coach, to be a trainer? Because I think that it is a similar career path, but how did you know?
So the only time in my life that I've been out of chronic pain is when I've been moving. And I know how good that can make me feel. Likewise, when I'm eating healthy, when I'm moving my body, when I'm in the right mindset all the time, this is where I feel the best for myself. And that's where it always has to start, is finding who you are and what works for you before you can really do that for everybody else. And I say this all the time, and it's because I've experienced it firsthand. Until I knew that my greater purpose was to help people. I already knew that because that's why I got into firefighting to begin with. That's why I loved my career when I was firefighting. But I showed up on the worst day of people's lives, and I have so many memories in my mind that I wish I could erase, because seeing people hurt, seeing people die, holding them, pressing their chest while they're dying, that sits with you. It's heavy. So firefighting was great, but I always was showing up on an absolute shit day and trying to make their day the best I could. With coaching, I get to show up any given day and show my clients, show the people that I work with how to live their best life, and how to aspire for more, how to get out of that self-doubt, that I don't even know the word. How to get out of their own way and live their best life. And that to me is the best career you could ever have, because you get to give back to so many people on so many levels.
The impact that you have on other people's lives and
how. That's why on my vision board I have impact in big letters across the top, because truly I love impacting lives. I love seeing the changes that I make. When my clients tell me they're no longer in pain, when my clients tell me that they've lost 28 inches, when they've lost 30 pounds, this is life-changing. This is giving them the opportunity to literally live their best life, and that fuels me.
It's like giving them a new life. It's like almost like...
Well, I've said it before, I'm competitive. Competition's always the thing. So I almost take it like a competition with all of my clients. How far can I take this? How far can we take this on a journey together? Like, you tell me how far you want to go, we'll get it.
That's awesome. So what makes you continue wanting to train? Because I know that, sometimes life happens and we don't really want to work out, or sometimes, we're just tired. We're just tired. So what makes you get out of bed in the morning and, with some pep in your step, to want to give back, to want to train, versus it being a monotonous piece?
For me, it always starts with gratitude. Every morning when I wake up, I do my gratitude practice. It's just a mental thing, and I'll wake up and I'll always tell myself 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for first thing in the morning. My kids are always in there. Kayla's always in there. I do the same ones sometimes. But my big thing is being able to exemplify who I am so that I can inspire other people to do the same thing. So I might not be the best, the biggest guy, but I work hard, and I hope that shows. And everybody that that surrounds me, I feel like we can lift each other up all the time, and that to me is a powerful feeling. Like with you and I, when we have our conversations, when we spend our time together with the kids, we are a very uplifting family. We're a very positive family 95% of the time. Sure, we go through some shit too, everybody does. But when I am training myself, particularly, it gives me that confidence. It gives me that motivation, just on the internal level to keep pushing myself. Because if I have days off, like back when Kayla and I had COVID a while ago, like a few months ago, anyways. But when we got sick and I had that almost 2 weeks off, I felt like absolute trash at the end of it. I didn't feel like myself. I felt foreign in my own body. So for me, training is just part of life. It's something that makes me feel good, makes me, in my eyes, look good. So why the hell wouldn't I do it?
Well, it kind of completes your cycle. Like you said, when you took some time away from it, you realize what your life was without it. And sometimes when we take things away, we step out of them for a little bit. It's really hard to get started back into them. So how do you, when you do fall out of that practice, how do you get back on the horse?
That is a hard question. For me, I guess it would be, because there have been times where I've injured myself. There have been times when I get sick and you take a little bit of time off. And honestly, it comes back to action. Action comes before motivation. We always say this too, and it really is true. So when I have these stints where I have to take time off the gym, whether it's, I dislocate my shoulder or I get sick or whatever it might be, I need to remind myself that once I get moving again, how much different I'm going to feel. Because generally when you take time off, or anybody who it hasn't started the journey into fitness or health anyways, the mind state isn't matching who you truly want to be. And I say that as a very broad spectrum, but it's true. Because for myself, when I take time off the gym, I start to get those self-doubts, the low self-esteem, the low confidence. It all starts to creep
Those
in
bad
slowly,
habits start to
right?
come back.
But it doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, and then it slowly starts to trickle in until you realize it. And for me, when I realize it, I'm like, holy shit, I'm a completely different person right now. I need to switch the mind state, and I need to get back to the person that I love being.
And I think it's important to note that when you let go of, say, one healthy habit, say it's working out or exercising, moving our body, and then like you said, the things start to trickle in. I want to also note that other unhealthy habits might trickle in. So maybe you're not eating the whole foods that you were eating. Maybe you're, eating more French fries and those kinds of things. And understanding that it all begins to impact us at a greater level. What we are nourishing our body with is impacting our mental health, our physical health, and then not moving our body is impacting our mental health and our physical health. And so it becomes a compounded effect, and it's really easy to get stuck in that cycle.
Yeah, 100%.
So I know that you've struggled a lot with gut health over the years. Like we've already talked about ulcers and stomach, and anybody that knows anything about vagal nerve knows that our gut brain connection and all of that kind of plays in here. So you've struggled a lot with gut health and food sensitivities. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit?
Oh God. This is a deep rabbit hole at 48 minutes in. So for me, gut health started at a very young age. When I was like young, like 6, 7, I was sick all the time. They couldn't figure out why. I couldn't put on weight. I was not in a good place. I went to so many doctors. I went to so many specialists. Nobody had any answers. And then, thank God, my Uncle Les at the time knew a specialist somewhere in Toronto that was like, hey, just go see him. So they got an appointment with this doctor. I went in there, and they they found out that I was allergic to bread. At the time, that is what they honestly said. They're like, it's bread. But now we know that it was actually gluten. So I am a celiac, always have been. But for me, gut health started there because once I started to cut that out, I started to feel better. But then I've also had so many other food allergies that kind of have come along the way too. So it's dairy, it's gluten, it's friggin' eggs now. It's there have been so many intolerances and so much issues with my gut health throughout the years. And really trying to figure those out so that I don't have that inflammation in my body, so I don't have that pain in my body. I mean, again, I had those ulcers. The food I was eating back then definitely did not help with that. Um, and then yeah, just the general unrest in my gut for my entire life. I've dealt with it for years, and finding out how to deal with that properly and eliminating certain foods from my diet and watching what I'm eating and what I'm consuming in general and the stress levels and everything. There's so much into that.
I know one of the biggest things that I was really concerned with when we've been over the years just struggling so much with your digestive health is that I was worried about long-term inflammation causing potential cancer or other kind of issues down the road. And so for me, it's always been a really big focus of like, okay, we need to fix this. We need to help you get better. And so would you say that through the process of beginning to love yourself, beginning to wholeheartedly accept yourself, that yes, there's food intolerances, food sensitivities that have been there, and we're working through that and we're understanding them better and understanding how food really does affect your body, but would you say that the mental component has played a huge role in that?
100%. Stress is a magical thing. Learning how to regulate your stress and how to come out of a stress response is the most important thing you can learn to do to start to feel better. And this is on so many levels. Again, better in the mind, better in the body, just feeling comfortable in yourself again. Because for me, for so many years, because I held myself to a different standard because I knew the person that I was, and I knew that that wasn't who I wanted to be. So I held on to that piece of me for so long. I mean, it wasn't up until probably the last year or so where I finally let go of that old version of myself fully and was like, that is not who I am at all anymore. But I let that affect me for so long because it was a subconscious thing almost. It was old hat. It was so comfortable. It was so old that it was just there. And I didn't even realize that it was affecting me for the longest time. And then when I finally did, it was so relieving to be able to say 100% that is not me because I'm a freaking unicorn compared to that old version.
At what point did you realize that you needed to forgive yourself for those past mistakes? Because in order to let go of something and to set it free and become liberated from it, I think that it's so important that we forgive and let go. You can't just let go of something because the pieces will again trickle back.
So forgiveness is a tricky subject, and for me, being able to forgive meant being able to be thankful for the person that protected me, because I mean I was in a survival state. I was again hanging out with the wrong crowd, let's call it, but I was in a pure survival mode for so long that I had to be able to thank that old version of myself and then let it go. So I don't know the date exactly, but I do actually have a letter still upstairs in my nightstand that I wrote to myself, thanking the old version of myself for protecting me, for getting me through all the shit that I went through, and then letting that go so that I could really kind of become the new version that I wanted to be. And that's got to be over a year now, but I could check the date on it.
Well, and that's important to note, that it's not like all of these steps and all of these transformations took place all at once. It took
baby steps, baby. Baby steps.
Years. And to start that process and understand that it is a process. The ball just keeps rolling forward, and it takes that consistency to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And we all have setbacks. We all have those thinking that creep in, those old patterning that once served us, the survival mode. It all comes back, and that doesn't mean that, one day you're completely liberated and that stuff never happens. Mm-hmm. That it is a consistent journey, a consistent effort, that this is who I want to be, and I keep wanting to go forward. I want to be more. I want to exude more. So what inspires you to keep going? You're about to cry.
I am not. I have these 3 amazing little people and this 1 amazing big person. Everything that I do in my life is for not only myself, but for my family. And for me, what inspires me to keep going is seeing how hard the people around me push themselves and the standards that we set for ourselves and the fact that we hold each other accountable to those standards. So I know when I have shit days, you call me out on it. Just like when you have shit days, I call you out on it. Having somebody that unequivocally has your back is the most important thing in the world. So for me, that is this person, this amazing human beside me. But my big reason for continuing to push forward is for my family, and it is for myself. You know, finding ways to improve myself, finding ways to always better how I'm going to approach my scenarios, how I'm going to approach my days, so that every day can be 1% better than the last one. And I know it's like that cliche 1% better every day, but it is a reality that if you want more out of this life, you have to strive for that. You can't settle. The day you settle, the day you say this is enough, I've hit my plateau, I'm there, it's the day you stop living. You know, it's like the old saying I always used to say was the day you stop learning is the day you stop living. And it's kind of the same in this. The day you stop accepting growth and change in your life for the positive is the day that you may as well kind of throw in the towel.
And that you give yourself more happiness in that process, because the process of learning how far you can push yourself is there's no word to even give it, because you don't understand the power the mind has, the power the body has, the power that you have in order to push yourself and keep going forward and keep striving for more. And that you do not have to be a product of your circumstances or a product of your past. You are not that person. That you at any given moment can make that change, can make that effort, and to really step into this new person, this new entity of who you want to be. You can redefine it at any moment.
If I can say one thing that kind of sums it up, if you want to change in your life, you can make that change in your life. If I had accepted the circumstances that I was going to be a drug dealer who dealt with biker gangs, and if that was the person that I was meant to be and that was the path that I was going to live, then I could have stayed with that and just accepted it. But I didn't accept that, and I said, no, this isn't who I'm meant to be. I'm meant for a lot more in this world. And being able to embody that, take it forward, and really, you know, make an honest run out of life. Life was never meant to be easy. It's meant to be lived. So living that life and living your best life every day is really the best way that you can live, and push yourself and push the people around you, hold people accountable, hold yourself accountable, and enjoy the small moments. Really, like, when you get busy, it's easy to forget all of the trivial things, the things that you just take for granted every day. But when you break it down, those are the small moments in your day, the small moments in your life that you get to be grateful for. I mean, laugh with your family, love with your family. It's life.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with everybody today. And I know that being vulnerable is not an easy thing.
It is not Mike's strong suit.
And I know you were super nervous jumping into this podcast because you weren't sure, oh my gosh, where are we going to go with this?
What rabbit hole are we diving down?
So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for sharing every piece of you with everybody and sharing your light. I know that it means the world to me, and it means the world to so many other people. And I hope that your story inspires just one person to step into a better version of themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you guys all so much for listening to today. I hope you found value in today's episode. If you liked it, share it with a friend or a family member. Share it on your social media. This is how we get our message out, and this is how we really expand our reach. We want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to step into the best version of themselves. Thank you so much once again from the bottom of my heart. Bye for now.
Have a good day, guys.